Ah, yes, intelligence. You're gonna want to get used to hearing that word because I use it a lot in this video. I would tell you to make it into a fun drinking game or something, with the drinking liquid obviously being implied as water. Duh. But even drinking water this much could probably kill you. So just try counting the amount of times I say it or something. See? Look how interactive I am. Alright, so how did I get here? How did I land on this topic? Well, the real answer is probably years of feeling unworthy for my contributions in school by feeling underestimated by all the men around me and therefore constantly contemplating my place in the intellectual world. But the fun, upbeat answer is, I don't know, it just came to me one day. I spent the whole day feeling lazy and unproductive and then feeling bad about my unproductivity, and then it just struck me, you know, as it does. All of a sudden I just had the idea. And to top it off, it was the kind of idea that could potentially yield 4 to 6 pages of writing, so it was a win. It's crazy how that works sometimes, huh? So here we are. After a surprising amount of procrastination, I've decided to pop the question. What is smart? There's no denying that some people are just smart. But what is it? I know I keep doing this, but the definition, according to Google, is the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills, which to me doesn't single out those smart kids from high school, or as I like to call them, traditionally intelligent people. It seems to include all walks of life, including those who make a living through trade work, which is something I can absolutely agree with. Everyone has their own strengths. I absolutely understand that. I know that I have no knowledge of plumbing, and I know that a plumber is much smarter at fixing pipes than I am, but just because I don't know how to fix pipes doesn't mean that I'm dumb. In fact, the knowledge that I possess may be considered useful to some groups, making me kinda smart. Of course, it depends on who you ask. I'm sure some people would consider me unintelligent simply because of the way that they live and what they consider important in their existence. You know, if I lived in a society where the only commodity was plumbing, I would be dumb as a brick. And I accept that. Maybe you've heard the saying, oh, he's not book smart, he's street smart, or something like that. Something implying that there are different types of smart, which I absolutely agree with. But that's a very simplistic way of looking at intelligence. And per usual, this topic is a lot more complicated than you would expect it to be. So let's take a peek into what I like to call interpreting what society wants. We see a lot of contradictions to the United States standard of intelligence. There are plenty of people who hate the school system, is what I'm trying to get at, which is completely understandable. Why is it important to know scientific facts and math if it's not going to help you in the field that you're going into? That's a valid question, especially considering the fact that this traditional type of intelligence isn't rewarded in society anyways. The type of intelligence that is rewarded is the kind that can get you the most money in the easiest way possible, because money can get you anything you want. It can also hide anything you want. So then this brings up the idea of intelligence being related to power. And let's be honest, there's definitely an issue when the very concept of a school system reminds you of a power play. When we're in high school, we all tend to view these traditionally intelligent people, you know, the ones that do well in the ACT and in English classes, as the most powerful ones, or at least I did. Which I guess could be considered a good thing to the upper levels in America because they want us to have better science and math fields so that we can compete with other countries when it comes to technology. And these smart kids in high school make it more competitive and therefore make more people want to do it. Even though these higher ups seem to completely forget the fact that the reason we're so behind in these fields is because of the very capitalistic system we all innately support. Let's go 1%. But what I learned after I got out of high school is those really smart kids are honestly just the average Joe in the real world. Because, like I said, at the end of the day, intelligence isn't what America rewards. Sure, you can get more money being an engineer than a fast food worker, or whatever, but it's still nothing in comparison to those stock market brokers or those businessmen. And all of this doesn't even mention the socioeconomic disadvantages many Americans face because of the way they've been raised and treated due to society's definition of smart. Which, you know, if we were to go into, would basically say that people who live in poor neighborhoods typically stay there and find it harder to get out of because education works against them and their need to provide for their family, which often makes them feel overwhelmed and discouraged, meaning that they are much more likely to settle down into a routine without education. So alright. We've covered the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was a terrible human being. Oh, oops, I'm sorry. I meant we've covered the fact that society doesn't reward intelligence. But if intelligence isn't that thing that we're all rewarded for, What is it? Spoiler alert, I'm still not going to answer it. We've got multiple types of intelligence, as I've said before. But even more than the intelligence you have for your job, you also have emotional intelligence and other more abstract types. But for now, we'll just focus on the intelligence you need for your job. We'll call it practical intelligence and also emotional intelligence. Practical intelligence is what helps keep you safe and stable at your job. It gives you the confidence you need to do your job well, which supposedly gives you your rank, or whatever you want to call it, which gives you your paycheck, which, say it with me kids, is power. Yep, that's right, you got it, I'm so proud. So this type of intelligence relates back to the traditional type that I was talking about earlier, but this time it's a bit more personal. You being a good plumber will get you more business, which will get you more money, which you probably need, like the rest of the 99%. So this type of intelligence is rewarded on a small scale. But what about emotional intelligence? Isn't the goal of living to be happy or fulfilled? And isn't that an emotion? I'm not saying that having the practical intelligence for your dream job isn't going to make you happy. You may be perfectly fulfilled in your job, and that's wonderful. But most humans' lives are a bit more complicated than just having a good job. Most of them have a romantic interest, or a passion, or children, which means you have to have a lot more knowledge than just what's practical for your job. Most humans typically need emotional intelligence as well. You know, that thing that helps you communicate and enjoy life. I don't know too much about this topic, so I'm not gonna go in much depth describing it, but I'm pretty sure we all know the general thing I'm talking about, right? And also, in my defense, emotions are a very abstract concept. So pardon me for not having them figured out yet, okay? What I find interesting is some people use this type of intelligence as a job. An example of which might be a therapist or an actor or something, which is very impressive to me. But even then, they have to find a way to separate their job emotions from their home emotions. So most humans have to have both. When I first started pursuing this topic, I thought I would be comparing whether practical intelligence or emotional intelligence is better. But neither of them are better. Yay! Yin yang, I don't know. I feel discontent with these answers. There's something buried in us that respects some trades more than others, which means we tend to think some people are smarter than others. For example, there's a pretty general belief that doctors are smarter than artists, which might be true and might not be true. We don't know. Like I've said about 1,000 times, it depends on which way you're looking at it and which standards you're holding people up to. An artist might have more emotional intelligence than a doctor because a doctor probably has to do a lot of emotional distancing in order to be around that much pain and death so often, right? But to me, this kind of brings up the classical question, do some lives have more meaning than others? And this, for some reason, is a very sticky subject. But basically, isn't it more worthy to be a doctor who directly helps and saves people daily than to be unemployed and sitting on your couch? There are plenty of branches off that question, though, don't worry. And that's a question that can very quickly get complex and very ethical, so we're just gonna leave it for now. But what I'm trying to get at is society has a specific ideal for what type of intelligence they want, even if the person that has that ideal isn't directly rewarded. I just don't know what that ideal is, though, because there are plenty of trades that seem to be useless but are still highly respected. So then how do you live your life knowing that you don't fit into the intellectual ideal of society? I think the only way self-aware people can sleep at night is by defining intelligence individually. They just have to accept that they may be smart in some way, but they'll never be smart as someone else in another way. And honestly, that shouldn't be too hard for the self-aware person to accept, because the self-aware person probably already knows that everybody's existence is completely individual. So why would intelligence be any different? But the hard part about intelligence is that you may want to say that it differs from person to person, but it's so hard to believe it, especially when it comes to your own intelligence. I think we're all a bit hesitant to admit that we're good at things, or at least I am. I find it hard to know what type of intelligent I am because I know that I'm not the traditional type. I also know that I'm not the emotional type. And these limitations are probably something that a lot of people can relate to. So I'm sorry for making you think about how dumb we all are, but don't feel bad about yourself for not fitting into one of the typical definitions. You probably have something you're good at or have a lot of knowledge on. We all have a passion or two, right? I hate to leave this video with the moral being intelligence is subjective, but I think I'm gonna have to do it because it's true. And I've left all my other rambles on an unfinished note, so I don't feel as bad doing it this time. I don't need to read to be an intellectual. Everyone knows that. I'm wearing my favorite jeans. I guess you could say they are my smarty pants.